What is up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Crashing Thunders. Today's a special one with just me, Thunders. And speaking of Thunders, we've got the legendary UK drummer, Thunderstick, Samson,
Hi.
Maiden, Thunderstick, and
Yeah,
more.
yeah. Thank you
How
very
are you?
much. I'm cool. I'm really good. I mean, just that we've been just talking off air a little bit about coronavirus and all the things that have happened because of it.
Oh,
So
yeah.
it's been pretty rough. It's been rough for you guys over there and for us as well. It's just nice to see a few things opening up and a few gigs are starting to take place again.
Oh, yeah.
So we went out to our first gig. It was a friend of mine, funny enough, the guy that was playing in Maiden when I was with them, the guitarist, a guy called Terry Watram.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And we went and saw his band, which was really good. And it was just, nice to get out. That's the main thing. It was really
Yeah.
cool.
Oh, yeah. Like I said, when we were talking off air, I saw my first show in over a year,
Yeah.
July on the 3rd, and it was
I
amazing.
mean, I think that there's going to be a good vibe to it all because so many people have been starved of live music that
Yeah.
whereas once upon a time they say, do we go to this gig or don't we? I think now it's going to be a definite,
Oh,
let's
yeah.
get out the door and go,
Well,
So,
that's how it was. I mean, my first show in over a year, the whole crowd was just, any
really,
inconvenience wasn't a bother. We were overjoyed to be there. We
yeah,
waited so long. It was so nice.
that's great.
So
That's great.
I'm hoping it continues to be like, because it does seem like in the past couple decades, people have gotten a little bit, like,
Blase.
yeah, it's just music,
Yeah, that's right.
Now it's like, oh, fuck, I missed this.
That's it. Yeah, exactly.
Well, we talked a little bit about the future. Let's backtrack. Tell
Okay.
me about your upbringing, where you're from, and what was the spark that made you want to get into rock and roll music in general?
I was born in an area of London called Southeast London. It was 1950s. I was born midway through the 50s, 1954. It was, just a normal kind of place. It was out of the centre of London, one of the many boroughs and provinces of London. Not just a normal kind of childhood until I started seeing things on TV and seeing bands on TV, and that just opened the door for me. It was like instantaneous. And the way it all started was that I was collecting for what was once called a jumble sale. Now, a jumble sale for you guys is just like a car boot fair, that kind of thing, sort of a garage sale for you, that sort of thing. So anyway, I was collecting all these items and somebody threw out a pair of really huge military drumsticks. And they didn't make it to the jumble sale. They stayed with me. And I then started to beat up on my parents' furniture. And so they thought, you know what, to put an end to this, we've got to do one thing, and that's go out and buy them a drum kit. So I was 9 years old. I got my first kit, and it just said something to me. I've never had any lessons or anything like that. I'm totally self-taught. I tend to play from the heart. And in saying that, I mean that it's just as the music takes me at that particular time. So whether it be live or whether it be in the studio, it's passion. I'm passionate about playing. My technique is probably shit. It's probably terrible.
I mean, that's how I approach the guitar. So you and me are alike in that.
Okay, yeah. I mean, it's wonderful when you turn on YouTube or something and you see these 8-year-olds and they're just playing along to a Rush track or something like that.
Yeah.
And you think, oh man, whereas I have to sweat blood to actually put my performance together. But it opened the door, and that was it really. I kind of wanted to be involved in music. My first job was working for a recording studio called Pi, which was in the central London. I wrote to, this was by the time I was about 17. I wrote to numerous studios throughout the whole of London, and most of them sort of passed. But then I got this one break where one of them answered and said, yeah, come and work with us, you know. So I started working as a tape op. But I was really frustrated at being on the wrong side of the glass, because by then I was playing quite a bit and thoroughly enjoying it. And I would see these bands come in, and I was so envious of the fact that they were coming in and they were making music, and I'm just kind of running, making cups of coffee, or, you know, and learning how to, you know, work a tape deck, you know.
Yeah, I'd reckon I'd rather be making the stuff that's going on tape than.
That's exactly right. That's how it happened. So then I started, you know, with various bands, and I got to know a guy. I was by the time I was 17, I moved out and had a apartment of my own, and there was a guy next door, and we're talking about sort of mid 70s now, you know, early part mid 70s. And he looked a real freak, which was great, you know. And I saw him every now and then, and he lived next door. And I saw him on a platform waiting for a train, and he said, "Do you live next door to me?" And I said, "Yeah, that's right." I thought, "Oh, here it comes. It's going to be a complaint about me playing the drums, you know, inappropriate hours and all the rest of it." And I said, "Okay, look, you know, I'll keep it down." I'm like, no, not worried about that. I'm a guitarist. Do you fancy hooking up? And so exactly, we did just that, you know. We started playing, and we got a band together, and that was it. We started doing, you know, shows, and we were a kind of real glam rock band. You know, I used to have a lot more hair than I got now. But used to backcomb it, so it all
Funny you mentioned glam rock, because we had Rocky Shades on the show a few weeks ago
really?
from Rap Child UK. So that's kind of cool that you have some glam connections in a way.
Yeah. You know? And that, well, but because by that time it was really happening, you know. But Bowie was coming up with Ziggy Stardust, and
the New York Dolls, I know, were hugely permeating in record collections over there too in 75, 76 as well.
Yeah, I started, funny enough, I was watching some of their stuff on YouTube the other day, some of the New York Dolls footage, the early footage, you know. They did a show over here called the Old Grey Whistle Test. Yeah,
that's where the punks and the hippies got into it, because David Johansen said that the host had rabbit teeth or something like that, bunny teeth.
Yeah, so that was it, So
that's what's, I think, from everything I've read in history books, that's the one link you could say where punks and hippies started to hate each other.
Yeah.
That's funny.
So anyway.
Yeah. So what was the name of this band? Do you remember?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, it was called Tiny and the Hot Toddies.
Nice.
And we didn't. There was no Tiny in the band. The Tiny, actual fact, was a roadie.
That's funny.
And funny enough, he went on and formed a huge, great big trucking company called Trans Am Trucking.
Oh, wow.
And they did all the stage, you know, moving stuff around, and that was Tiny. And real nice guy. So we started playing quite a bit. I mean, we pulled a residency in a club in Wardour Street, which was just down from where the original Marquee was. You know, the famous Marquee. This was a place called Crackers, and we started changing the audience. And by that I mean that up until then, it had been kind of, they'd had a Friday night residency of jazz bands and, you know, that kind of stuff. And the guy that owned it, the landlord, he decided to take a chance on us. And obviously the first week or two, when people were kind of wandering in expecting to see this jazz band, they got us, and it was like, whoa, what is this? And that all kind of, but it soon changed. Within about, I would say, about 3 to 4 weeks, we were really pulling a good crowd in there and getting a good audience, you know.
Nice.
So we were doing a lot of gigs, and there was also another festival called the Windsor Free Festival. Now, the Windsor Free Festival is where it took place in Windsor Park. It was an illegal festival. You know, all these trucks would just turn up with generators, and they would make a stage out of the truck, the back of the truck.
Yeah.
So we played this place. It was cool because some of the bands that were on, I mean, it ran for 5 days, this festival. And it ran for about 4 or 5 years, and then the police decided they'd had enough, and they came in and busted the whole place. But there were some really good bands on it, and we were on it. We played early evening, and then bit by bit, all the stages started closing down until there was this one stage that was open, the one that we had played on. And the guy that was stage manager for that, he said, "Do you want to do another set?" And this was about 2 o'clock in the morning. And we said, "Yeah, right, okay." So we went on and did exactly the same set once again at 2 o'clock in the morning. It was great, but that really pushed me on to the next phase, really, of my career.
What was that next phase?
Okay, a guy came up and said to me, and the guitarist Danny, he said, "Look, my name's Simon. I've got a band in Sicily." I went out there in the 60s with the band, and they had got really quite famous. The band had parted company with the then lead singer of the band. It was called the Primitives, or the Primitives.
Okay.
And the singer's name was Mal. And Mal went solo and started doing stuff off his own accord. And the band went that way, and they started doing their stuff. And Simon was the now singer for that band. He said, "Look, I've got a farm, I've got a club, I've got condos that are being built, I've got a petrol station out there, etc., etc. I need a drummer and a guitarist. Are you guys interested?" And we kind of looked at each other and went, "Yeah." By that time, I was 19. And we sort of looked at each other and thought, "Yeah, right. You know, this is going to happen. Yeah, right."
Yeah.
Anyway, long story short is that it happened, and we went out to Sicily and we started playing. We went all around Italy, Greece, Sardinia. Really cool place to live. I mean, you're talking about 1974 now.
Okay.
And you can imagine that they looked on us as though we'd fallen from outer space somewhere. Our hair was all over the place, and as I say, it was sort of glam rock type, and you know that. Yeah. And these guys, you know, the sons of these good families, the good Sicilian families, would go to church, and they'd come out in the, you know, after church, and they'd look at us and go. And they used to call us scimmia, which is monkeys. They used to go like that. And it was really good. I mean, I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was a great time. We were living on the banks of Mount Etna, the volcano. And
oh, wow.
Yeah, it was.
That'd really be beautiful, man.
Oh, man, it was. It was. I mean, when we first got out there, we moved into a farm that he owned, that Simon owned. And it was all made out of solidified lava rock.
Oh, wow. That's cool as shit.
Yeah, no electricity, no gas, nothing like that. We had a well for water.
Primitive.
Exactly. There you go. The Primitives. Yeah, and that's how we, you know, our band and our crew that we had, and yeah, it was really good. We'd open up, or at night, you know, we'd sit there and have a couple of J's and just sitting there watching, you know, this exploding volcano and thinking, wow, this is the life. This really is the life. And then going out and touring, it was just really, yeah.
Especially at 19, 20 years old. You know, I'm sure that you grew up quick of doing that.
Yeah. Oh yeah, man. Didn't I just? Yeah. We had a bass player that because at the time they were still having conscription, And you know, they were doing national service and all that. And in Sicily, there's a naval base, American naval base called Sigonella. And our bass player at the time was AWOL. He'd gone AWOL and he joined us in the band, and you know, grew his hair and you know, beard.
Wow.
And came out touring with us. But you know, just down the road, as it were, was his other life.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, it was really good. Yeah, yeah. I wonder what he's doing now. Wow. But there you go. So that was a big part of my life.
How did that come to an end? Was that a good ending, a bad ending?
No, it wasn't a bad ending. It's just that I mean, much that it was great, we kind of felt that we were caught in that trap, and it was just constant, you know, that it was, you know, fantastic, and it was great to begin with, but after a while it just felt as though, you know, this became the normality thing.
Yeah,
and
stagnant.
so I decided to come back and try and, I mean, no matter where you go on the planet, you always want to try and make a name for yourself in your own home country.
Yep.
You know, I'm not saying it doesn't mean anything to, you know, to be not famous, but to be known and recognized in other places. But you always want to try and do it in your own country. So I came back to here. I mean, the band broke up. A couple of them went to the States, went to Arizona. I came back to the UK and started playing back here again. So, yeah.
What was this, 75, 76?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, just before I kind of met up with some guys. I was doing some, do you have folk rock over there? You know, folk rock, it's, I can't really explain it. It's almost like the kind of, I suppose Grateful Dead, that kind of music, you know, like a country rock type of thing, you know. And I was in a band that was doing that.
I heard people refer to the Grateful Dead as like stoner country or hippie country music, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, Americana.
That's Americana. Yeah. And that's kind of what the band I was playing with when I came back and got into. And I really enjoyed it, but always looking for something else. And little did I know, but that something else was literally just around the corner. And I thought, you know, I need to join a band that were had a little bit more direction, and I needed to have, you know, a band that envisaged and knew the bigger picture.
I think I know where this is going. Knowing your history.
Was Iron Maiden, yeah.
Now, just so we're clear, and so I can explain, when I interviewed you for Uncivil Revolt, and that was through email, some of the questions you were like, that didn't happen. I was going off of information from Steve Harris on a documentary on a Maiden DVD. So just so you know, that was the only thing I had known before I had talked to you.
Right.
So his account in the early days documentary on the DVD clearly isn't fitting with, you know what I mean?
I do know what you mean. Yeah, it doesn't. I mean, he says that I did one gig, which is bullshit.
He said that you went and did like a drum solo in the middle of a song and went into your whole Thunderstick persona, saying, "Hey, you so and so's," and just got worse or something like that.
Well,
something to that effect.
Funny enough, I have that exact tape home here. Okay. I've managed to get a copy of it, which is really good because I hadn't heard it. And if I was somebody that was supposedly out of it and falling asleep on stage or whatever, it was,
shit like that.
Then there's somebody else playing the drums on this tape because it's
clearly
I'm clearly on it. I am bang on it. All the offbeats, all the little kicks, and etc. I am on it.
Were you in the band when they had the keyboard player?
Yeah.
Because I downloaded a bootleg years ago that had you listed as the drummer in the bootleg, and the keyboard player was on it, not the other guitars. So I've actually heard this tape that you're talking about years ago.
Right.
So I can vouch that you were playing drums.
Yeah, I did. But I was, I was stupid, and yes, I did at one point. There were loads of guys at the bar all chatting away and talking and one thing and another.
Oh
And
yeah.
I did at one point stand up and say, "Look here, you." Yes.
Yeah. But he just made it seem like worse than it actually was, I guess. I don't know.
Had I known at the time that this was going to haunt me for the rest of my life, I probably wouldn't have done it. But there you go. Shit happens, and that's the way it is. So yeah.
And every case of rock history, it's always written by the winners, so to speak. So, obviously it's not going to be accurate per se, anything to make them look better. And that's no slight to Steve. I get it. It happens with everyone. Kiss do that to this day and piss off their fans repeatedly.
Yeah.
So how did you join Maiden?
I'm doing a book. I'm actually writing a book myself. So
nice.
It's going to deal with well, I say it's going to. I've already actually covered the Iron Maiden period that I was in.
Nice.
So I've done all that. And I hope
looking forward to it.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a character assassination on anybody or anything like that. It is my true account of what it was like at that time. And it's Maiden at the time were just another band that had clarity in what they wanted to do. They were very focused.
Yeah.
And I say they because not only Steve, but also the then singer Dennis Wilcock. I thought it was his band originally because he had far more projection than Steve had. I mean, Steve was somewhat shy at the time, not like the guy he is now, obviously.
But, he still seems a little shy to a degree, but not like on stage or anything.
No. But Dennis used to do a lot of the organisation and doing stuff. So he had worded the advert that I applied for, and it was all kind of, we're Maiden, we're doing this, we're doing that, and that kind of gave me that kind of impetus to be involved in something like that, because I thought, this is great. This is really directional and people know what they want to get. But I never, ever felt part of the gang, as it were, because as I explained, I was born in southeast London, and that's across the other side of the River Thames. And it's like you have a south and north divide in the States, obviously. And I always had to cross over the river to go to the East End to go and rehearse. And
because they're on the East End.
Yeah. And I wasn't sort of part of that gang, as it were,
Gotcha.
It was always kind of weird for me. But it was a great band. I learned a lot. Steve and I used to get together to do bass and drum rehearsals, which is something that I had never ever done before. I'd always just rehearsed with the band, with the full band there and everybody blowing away at the same time. But with Steve, he introduced me to that kind of, let's work on the bass and drum passages, which is.
Well, I mean, with Maiden, it makes sense though, because a lot of the stuff comes from the bass, and you interplaying with the bass, and a hell of a bass player to interplay with. Was he doing all that crazy bass shit even back then? Like,
not as much.
Okay.
He had limited crazy bass shit. Let's put it that way.
Because it seems like for us, like for fans and people who weren't around then,
was always like that way.
Yeah, 1980, Phantom of the Opera,
we were doing those songs. So I mean, he was not so much the bass style, but the actual composition of the material.
Oh wow! Okay,
I mean, if you have heard the tape that you said you have heard, then you would.
It was years ago. Yeah, I was a teenager.
So he was doing that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
First finger player I'd ever played with. I'd always played with pick players.
Yeah.
And he was the first finger player that I played with. Yeah.
As a drummer, I can't relate, but I've played bass both finger picking and with the pick. Which one do you prefer to play with, or does it matter?
Pick.
Really? Why?
Because I got spoiled with the people that I played with. Later on after my Maiden period, I then, as you know, went to Samson. and started playing with people like John McCoy from Gillan.
Yeah.
And John, John's still a really good friend now, you know, we still sort of talk. He was like a human metronome.
Oh, damn.
Whereas with funny enough though, my bass player in Thunderstick at the moment is priority. He will give his finger playing priority over a pick. He can play the two, but he prefers, because he loves Steve Harris, he prefers to do the finger stuff. But I always love that really percussive way of playing bass with a pick, you know, and really laying into the string rather than slappy.
Yeah, well, it makes sense as a drummer to want a percussive kind of bass sound because it makes everything thicker. I get that.
Yeah,
I'm not a drummer; I'm a guitarist, so I was just curious out of, you know. So how long were you at Maiden, and how did the transfer from Maiden to Samson occur? Because that's kind of a conundrum too.
yeah, that's weird. Maiden, I think I was with them about 9 months, something like that. I mean, we didn't do a lot of work, that's for sure. It used to be numerous rehearsals all the time. We didn't do a huge amount of gigs.
Steve said that was a weird period for the band with Dennis Wilcox too, with the keyboard player and all that. That didn't last long.
No, it didn't. I mean, they still had to formulate the style.
Yeah.
I mean, if you'd have gone back a few years back, quite a few years back now, I mean, if you'd have said to Steve Harris, well, there's going to be a period where you will have 3 guitarists, I'm sure he would have turned around and said, what? No way. Yeah. You know, I'm happy with just the 2. But he has. Yeah. So it was an experimentation with keyboards.
Yeah.
And it didn't work. It didn't really work. And but Terry, the guy that was with them, the guitarist, great guitarist, he's just done some stuff for my next album, the Thunderstick album.
Nice.
And great player, really, really good player. You know, I just said the remit is, can you think Electric Ladyland, Hendrix, that kind of really spacey type of stuff. And he the song that he's got a 9-minute, a 5-minute passage within a 9-minute song for solo. And he submitted 7 or 8 solos that I've done a submix to, and oh man, they are just so right. So I'm really looking forward to getting that out there. And it was great to go and watch him the other day with his band playing. So yeah, it was good. But at the time, it was all experimentation. It was very much with Maiden. It was work as usual, you know, an ongoing band trying to finalize and formulate their style, and you know, the material was there, and it was just a case of finding the right sound. So anyway, I was with them about 8 or 9 months, something like that, you know, not very long, and I kind of moved on. It kind of grieves me a little bit that it's always been stated that I was given the push from. It didn't happen like that. It really didn't. We kind of just drifted apart. We did a couple of gigs. Dennis left the band, so we were without a front man. I put some gigs together. There was a couple of gigs that I put together. And one of those gigs, I turned up with my kit and I got it all set up, etc. The rest of the band turned out, and Dennis hadn't shown.
Oh wow!
And that was the last time we all sat around, had a beer, and just said, you know, what's going to happen? And Steve was saying, I don't know, you know, I might even go back to college or whatever, because he was training to be a draftsman or something, a surveyor or something like that. Yeah. And he said, you know what, I might just go back to college. And that was it. I didn't phone him. He didn't phone me. But there was no official, you know, you're out of the band. I don't.
Yeah, like it's been documented.
I mean, there are so many different stories of it. It's unbelievable, the amount of diversity of the story. You know, the amount of bloody diverse stories that go on about who, you know, not just me, all the people.
Yeah, exactly. Isn't it great? Like, oh, when did I do this? Oh, I don't remember that. They must know more than I do.
You know, according to them, I fell asleep on stage whilst playing. Yeah, really? Okay, all right.
Yeah, that's believable.
Yeah. Mind you, Keith Moon didn't he? I mean, yeah, Keith Moon passed out, and I can remember Pete Townsend going, "Is there any drummers in the audience?" And they got a guy from the audience, a drummer, and he finished the set with them.
Wow.
Yeah, but that was because Keith Moon was taking horse tranquilizers. So not only was he neighing a lot and going,
you know, everyone talks about Bottom and the excesses. Nobody talks about Keith Moon and the rock and roll decadence accolades, it seems. At least over here, you'll get your Jim Morrison and your Janis Joplin and your Hendrix, but you know, even Brian Jones gets a little more attention over here than Keith, and I don't understand it.
No, I don't. I loved Keith Moon. I thought he was an excellent drummer. Totally unique, a man with his own style, wasn't he? Totally.
Yeah. I mean, I really like Ringo too for the same reasons in a completely different way. He had his own kind of thing. He wasn't fancy, but goddamn, that guy, his fills were perfect.
So many people just, I mean, so many people dismiss Ringo Starr as being a good drummer.
He created the modern style basis of rock drumming.
Yeah. That's right. I mean, you listen to a lot of his stuff, and it is really, really, as you say, he's bang on it all the time.
I always point people to the Plastic Ono record he did with John as a good example of what Ringo can do.
Yeah.
That was the perfect example.
And his son, Zach, ended up with The Who.
Yeah.
and took over the drum seat in The Who. So,
Yeah, there you go.
But Zach also had lessons from Keith Moon as well.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I'm sure. I mean,
your dad's Ringo Starr, so you take in everything that he can offer, and your tutor is Keith Moon, and you take in everything. It's like, whoa, yeah, that's cool. Yeah.
How do I sign up for that?
Yeah. So anyway, I went and I started playing around with other bands again. And then suddenly I spotted an advert for another band, because at the time there was no social media or anything like that. The only way that people or bands could actually get people into the band and enroll them in the band was by putting an advert in various publications. And Melody Maker was really well known within the UK for that.
You follow Kiss Lore, they did that in the Village Voice over here in the States. Same thing.
Yeah. So I saw this advert and thought, that looks interesting. And funny enough, years prior to this, I mean, we'd go back to when I was starting to play.
Yeah.
When I was still at school, we used to go out to a farm in a place called Chislehurst, where the farmer would let out his storeroom. It wasn't a barn or anything like that, but it was a load of vegetables in there, and they had a couple of PowerPoints in the middle of nowhere, and we could go out and rehearse there. I was with a little school band called Mind Cage, and I'd pass this guy every now and then who was coming in with his band Refugee, and be like, "Hi, how you doing?" And he would either be finishing and going home, and we'd be coming in, or vice versa. And I said to him, "What's your name?" And he said, "Oh, my name's Paul." I was like, "Okay, fine." Then a year or so later, before I went to Sicily, I got a job working bar, behind a bar. And in comes this guy again. And he's like, "Hi, I remember you. Yeah, you used to rehearse there." And yeah. Okay, yeah, so serve him, give him a pint or whatever it was that he was buying.
Yeah.
And that was cool. And then I went off and did my thing in Sicily and came back and what have you. I walked into the rehearsal studio after answering this advert, and I went, "No, not you." And he looked at me and went, "Oh, you?" And that was it. And
it just sounds very English way for it to happen.
Yeah, it was. It was just so strange. It was, remarkable that it happened that way.
Yeah.
And we got sort of recognized each other, so we had a blow, and I then had to attend a second audition. And when I turned up for the second audition, the bass player from Samson, Chris Aylmer, wasn't there. It was John McCoy from Gillen. And I was like, oh, right, okay. And John, I mean, you know, bald hair, great big beard like this, and a really big guy. And he stood about that far away from my face while I'm auditioning. And he's hitting the snare beats on the octave on his bass. So it's like that.
Yeah.
And he was right in my face and trying to phase me out completely. And I thought, you know what, I've blown it. I have really blown it. I kept with it, but I thought, you know, as I was going home, I thought I'd blown it. And sure enough, I got a phone call and they said, yeah, we want you to join. And that was that. So I was joined as myself, as Barry Graham Purkis. And as I said, when I was in Sicily, I used to paint my face and not like Kiss. I used to make my face gold, complete my hair, and look totally crazy out there. And I was still doing that as my sort of image.
Yeah.
But I thought, I needed more. I needed more from that image. So used to get in, as I say, there was never any kind of there were no videos at the time, man. You know, can you believe that? There was no real video, that videotape, and it was all about publications of music press. And Kerrang hadn't even come out by then. And I thought, you'd always get pictures of a band, and the guitarist would be posing like this, and you'd see the bass player and a singer strutting his stuff, and then the top of somebody's forehead and a row of cymbals, and that would be the drummer. It was, you know, with the drummer being well known, it was contradiction to the normality, really. Most of the time, it was all about the guys that were up front. There were no real, you know, drummers as per se. So I thought, you know what I'll do? I'll create a faceless drummer. So that's what I did. And I started wearing the mask. And that's it. I couldn't go under, you know, looking like that. I couldn't go under the name of Barry Graham Purkis. It would be really quite strange. So I thought, you know, descriptive the way I play Thunderstick. That's how it came about.
Nice. So originally it was just you, the bass player from Gillen, and Paul and Samson. Correct?
That's right.
How long was
Survivors,
that for?
Yeah. Because they'd written the first album.
Okay.
Well, they Paul and John had been together in a band, and they had written a whole album's worth of material, Survivors. So we went in and recorded that. It was only a matter of, I think it was about 10 days after I joined, that we went straight into the studio and started recording. And John was on bass, as you said, and Paul on guitar. Paul was vocals as well, doing vocals.
Yeah. He sang on the first record,
And myself, It still had that overhang from blues rock because Paul really loved three-piece power trios. Mountain, Grand Funk,
Budgie.
All the Budgie, you know, those kind of bands. Groundhogs was another band. And it would be all those kind of power trio bands. So he was really into that. And
probably Blue Cheer too, huh?
Yeah. That sort of band, you know, anything like that. Mahogany Rush. So it was the material was dictated to by that kind of idiom. It was that kind of music, blues, rock. That's why when Maiden came out, they were something very different because they had taken a different direction from the blues rock. And I think, you know, just harping back a little bit, Steve Harris turns around and says that punk never in any way influenced his way of playing or anything like that, which I think is rubbish, because the reason being is because when they came about, they had that energy. They had that energy that punk had given to the music industry, because up until then it had been all these kind of dinosaurs, you know, really big bands, stadium bands, that I think had lost touch a little bit with their audience.
Well, yeah, I mean the 20-minute drum solos and 20-minute organ solos and that, and
yeah,
it just it needed to be brought back to a street level, I think. And I always viewed punk as just really sped up, amphetamine fed 50s rock, really. That's all punk reminded me of, is really pure rock.
I know, but a lot of those musicians actually started to learn how to play.
Exactly.
Once they learn how to play, you maintain.
You can't be punk anymore.
It can't be.
No.
So proficient musicians, but playing with that kind of energy and that kind of electricity. Whereas with the first Samson album, we didn't have that. We still kind of would nod him back to the early blues days type of thing.
There's something special about that record, even with that I liked so much, though.
Oh, that's cool. That's great.
I love the 70s stuff when, before. I love heavy metal and everything, but I really like that 70s hard rock or proto metal where it was heavy and it was rocking, but it was grooving. You kind of lost that in the 80s with the formula and speed and everything. Not a bad thing, but Survivors, for me, I really like that one a lot, as much as the others, but it has that special point that you were talking about. It's definitely.
I had a great time playing with John on it, because he is, as you would know, being an admirer of that album, his bass style is really so good.
Oh yeah,
and it was great. And he taught me a lot. Even though we'd recorded in Sicily, I hadn't been in a studio that much, and I was still kind of, really learning the craft.
Yeah.
And to go in with John producing it. I learned a lot of stuff from him production-wise. Yeah.
I bet.
Yeah.
So, how did the record get received over there? How was the tour? Was there a tour? How did that?
Yeah, it was a tour. Yeah. It was the hard rock, the heavy metal crusade.
Nice. Okay.
We were gigging that material, but by then we started having record label interest, and the labels were saying, "Yeah, great as a 3-piece, but it doesn't cut it. You need somebody that's got a focal point for the band. You need somebody out front." And so we started looking for a vocalist. It was well received. The Survivors album was well received because the musicianship on it is good. And, you can't diss something that is good.
Yeah, agreed.
And it was of its time. But by then, things were starting to move, and they were starting to kind of veer off, and you were getting different offshoots of heavy rock or heavy metal as it had become by then. So we had to find out. By that time we were doing the tours with Maiden and Angel Witch. We put those tours together. We were still a 3-piece then, and by then Thunderstick was sort of gaining, well, not popularity, but
infamy.
Infamy. And I had actually managed to get that character, and it was being well received, and it was different, and I was getting a good amount of music press. And then, of course, I got the front cover of one of the music publications, Sounds.
Yeah.
And it was a very stark image. The early Thunderstick image was very stark. I used to black my eyes up with the same sort of grease paint that Kiss used.
Yeah.
So that it accentuates the whites of the eyes and the teeth. And very stark image. We had, at the time, there was a women's activist group over here called Women's.
I was going to ask you about all this because it ties into your history here.
They really didn't like my image at all. They would rip all the posters down and outside gigs, and we even had protests at various gigs. Not that we were that big as a band, it's not as though we were superstars or anything like that. We were still just kind of a normal band, but man, they hated it. They really did. And the amount of times that I offered to go on radio and have an interview with them, that they declined every time. So. But yeah, a stark image. And of course, around that time as well was a guy that became known as the Cambridge Rapist.
Yeah.
And that's something that Bruce really still keeps mentioning, and that kind of really sticks in my throat a lot. That, you know, he describes my mask as a
gimp mask,
the gimp or the rapist mask and stuff like that, which is, you know, even to this day he still kind of gets
in his book he called it a gimp mask. He didn't make any references to you being awful for the rape thing. I don't even think he mentioned the rape thing in his book, actually.
He does on his book tours, yeah.
Okay, that's unfortunate, because that paints you in a bad light that isn't so. When we get into Thunderstick, you know, the band will get there, but
okay.
I mean, I think that, you know, look at Slipknot. They owe you a royalty check, man. In my opinion.
Oh, if only, yes, please, thank you. But, I mean, yeah, it's unfortunate. I mean, just before we finish with the Bruce subject, I mean, I find it weird that somebody with his standing within the music industry has to, whenever he's asked about Samson, really just dismiss it.
Downplay it.
Yeah. And says that we were a load of druggies and that's all we wanted to do was to you know, pull women at gigs and get off with women.
You did all that and still got a first album made without him. So what?
Yeah, exactly.
It makes no sense. Okay.
No, it doesn't. But as you know, Maiden have got such a huge following, and they just believe all this stuff to be true. If it comes from the mouth of Steve Harris or Bruce Dickinson, it's got to be true. And
we know better.
It's unfortunate, isn't it? It really is. But anyway, that's the way it is.
So with hiring Bruce, how did that all go down from your memory and your perspective? Was that Head On that you guys did next?
Yeah. Yeah, we did the tour as a three-piece with Angel Witch opening, Iron Maiden middle bill on the bill, and then Samson. And there were a few record labels that at the time CBS was still going. They hadn't. What are they now? Sonic.
Something like that now.
Sonic, yeah. But they'd showed a lot of interest in us, and they turned around and said, "You need a focal point. You need a singer." So we started looking. There was a band way before punk that I used to really love, and that was a band called the Heavy Metal Kids. With if you ever get to have a look at them, man, you look them up because you'll love it. They really.
I have a few times actually, because you're not the first one to mention it, or not the first time I've heard that name. I know they're heavily influential, and yet they're a wild card that isn't mentioned very often.
Yeah, they're not. No, because I mean, there was a program on television, a series called Avida Zen Pet, and the singer from the band went on and was an actor in that program, and that was what he was well known for. But he was just a brilliant frontman. He used to mesmerize me. I used to sit there. I'd go to a lot of their gigs, and he used to really very kind of theatrical. He would have a character a bit like the Artful Dodger in that kind of thing he would be. And so I loved it, and I put his name forward. And then Paul and I went to a pub in where I live now, Kent, and there was this band that were playing there, and it was Bruce, and he was with a band called the Shots. They had set up in front of the toilets in this pub. It's only a small pub.
Yeah.
And he was using the toilets as a dressing room, a changing room, And part of his act would be that he would, just pick out various people in the audience and give them a real hard time about anything, about their colour of their hair or what they were wearing or whatever. And I was, by this time, I had bright red hair, looked like Ronald McDonald, you know, like huge, great, big, bright red hair, and you know, was dressing pretty weird and what have you. So he started in on me, and when he went out to the toilet in a kind of quick changeover bit, Paul and I went out and followed him into the toilet. And he thought at the time that we were going to go in there and beat him up for all
Yeah,
this.
that's what he said in his book.
Yeah. But it wasn't like that at all. You know, we
No.
just turned around and said, look, you know, we'd like to have a chat afterwards. So we had a chat. He was still at uni, studying his history degree. And he said, I can't do anything at the moment. And we said, well, you know, we're a band with management. We're on a small retainer wage. So we're actually getting paid for being musicians. And that was it. He finished and finalized his degree, history degree. And that's where all the subject matter comes from with Iron Maiden songs. You know,
Oh, yeah.
Because of his history, as it were.
I learned a lot more about history than I did listening to them as a kid than I did in school. I can honestly say that.
Really, yeah. I can believe it, yeah.
I highly doubt he'll watch this, but Bruce, at least play Alexander the Great one fucking time before you bow out. Come on.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not the only one.
Well, yeah. So anyway, I mean, that's how it happened. We got together. He came up and did a few encores with us while he was still at uni.
Nice.
And then the moment he joined, we set about writing, and it was we started writing in a different vein. The blues rock thing had gone and was now being replaced with a far more straightforward rock.
Yeah.
He had a lot of ideas. We had a lot of ideas. We put them all together, and the result was Head On.
Which is a great record, too.
Thank you.
Don't understand why these aren't more well known, especially stateside, maybe more so than over there. But
the funny thing about it is that there are people like yourself that do know about them, and they're really precious about knowing them. You know, they really feel something because they know of the history of it, and they there's a guy that is doing actually with a record that I'm making at the moment. He's doing the mastering for me, and he's got his own mastering company. And he was one of these guys, you know, that really latched on to Samson back in the early days, right at the beginning. Yeah. And there are people like that that really look on it as something special. And I think that's great because I was the same. I used to latch onto these American bands that people had never heard of, and I felt special because I had that special bond with them. And you could drop their name and other people would go, who? I don't know what you're talking about.
You're describing me.
Really,
now.
Yeah.
I mean,
and I love it.
I love it too.
Yeah, it's cool. Oh, what you mean to say you haven't heard this? You know, it's great.
What, you like glam and you don't know Rat Trout or Tiger Tails? What?
Yeah, exactly. So that's the way it all sort of came about. We started writing, and Head On came about. We were a four-man songwriting team we put together. We still hadn't got that major deal. The record was paid for by the management, by Samson's management, and we were still looking for that deal. And it got released. Maybe the production on it wasn't all that it should have been, but that's because we produced it ourselves, and I had a big hand in the production of it. I pushed for a production credit because I love being in a studio. For me, it's something special. I come alive in a studio. And I mean, if I was given a choice of not doing any studio stuff, but doing live work or vice versa, I would probably drop the live work and concentrate on studio because I just enjoy it so much. Yeah. So I had a lot of fun doing Head On, and all the kind of craziness that's on it is all mine involvement. I pushed for a production credit, producer Thunderstick, but Van wouldn't have it. So all I got was additional ideas by Thunderstick. And that's all the backwards choir bits and all the kind of really weird, wonderful stuff that goes on is all my doing. Yeah, that's great. Awesome. And I thought, you know, at that time, I was able to play at the most exuberant. I was, at that period, I was playing with the most. What is it? Just it's exuberance. It's
Yeah.
this is what I do, and I wasn't tied in any way because back with Maiden, although it was fun, I was just tied down to what I was doing with everything. But
Yeah.
with Samson, I was able to. We had Chris as bass player, so he would anchor everything, and I would be able to play live. I could play off of Paul all the time. So it wasn't a bass drum relationship. It
Yeah.
was more of a guitar drum relationship, very much like Keith Moon and Townsend.
Yeah.
So for me, I was able to express myself playing wise and be
You were
very
liberated.
yeah. That's exactly what it was, and so that was really good. Whereas with Shock Tactics, the next one that come along, I was put back in my box.
Yeah, and you can tell.
Yeah, I mean it's two different drummers, isn't it? You listen to those albums, you wouldn't think it's the same drummer.
Oh, agreed.
That's because Tony Platt came from working with AC/DC and came
Ah,
in.
gotcha. Okay. Yeah.
I mean, we had written a whole because of Head On. It done reasonably well. It charted in the national album charts, which was good. We'd done Reading Festival, which we went down a storm, which was also really good. Bruce was now finding himself in the band, and he was he wasn't the person he is now, that's for sure.
Yeah.
He was because he was a lot younger.
Yeah.
So it was all kind of new. Everything was new. And we had that kind of vitality and the energy. We did some wonderful tours. We went out with Rainbow. We went out. Robin Trow was a bit weird, that one, because, putting us two really, playing material from Head On, and then you got Robin Trow after us.
Yeah, that is a weird pairing.
Yeah.
Well, just like putting Girl with Angel Witch was a weird pairing.
Yeah. So, but we'd come on anyway with Shock Tactics. We were still looking for that major deal, and we hadn't got it with Head On. We let it go with Gem, which was a small company. They turned around and said that they would do a film with us, and that's how Bisects of Steel came about.
Gotcha.
That was crazy. Yeah, that was quite. And a lot of people still like that now. They love that.
Yeah.
I think that it's just totally out there. It is. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy, but it's good, I think.
Well, and then of course a lot of people understood that it was me or Thunderstick that was playing the roadie, and all those connotations. But with Head On, Shock Tactics, we had written a whole album, and we went in a pre-production with Tony for 2 weeks, and we literally pulled apart all the material that we'd already written and sort of started again. Something that would have been a bridge section, he would say, look, why don't you make that the chorus or make that a verse or whatever. And so like throwing everything up in the air and seeing how it came down again. And that's a bit strange as a musician, but also it's good because it gets you thinking in a different way, more disciplined. And I thought the album was good. The material on it is strong. Bruce found his voice. He just suddenly changed. He was a certain singer in Head On, and then when it came to Shock Tactics, he found his vocal style, and that set precedence for everything that he would do from there on in.
Yeah, absolutely.
So do you like it as an album, Shock Tactics? How do you say it? Do you like it as much as Head On?
I like it. I'd say out of the Samson catalog, it's probably lower on the level for my favorites because of the things that you mentioned. And it makes more sense now why that album seems so different than the others.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's not bad. It doesn't sound like Samson to me in a way.
No,
You know what I
no,
mean? It
yeah,
does, but it doesn't
yeah,
compared to the other two records.
yeah.
Your
I mean,
constraints are plain as day as well on that. I can see that they kind of put you back in your box. And it shows, unfortunately.
yeah, it does. Yeah, I mean, but hey ho, that's life. So
Yeah, it happens.
yeah,
Millions of other bands in rock and roll, you know.
yeah. So I'm lucky in as much as that now, because I'm still playing and I'm still making music, I'm able to do what I want with it, which
Yeah,
is nice. I'm not put into that categorized and,
no.
you know, squashed into a box and you got
Yeah.
to play
Well,
like this.
no musician likes that. Any real musician of any real salt doesn't like be put in a box,
Yeah.
you know.
Well, it's
Um,
because reading some of the reviews that of the new Maiden material, I know that there's only one track out there at the moment, but there seems to be two very strong opposing trains of thought at the moment. There are certain diehard Maiden fans that will say, "Oh, it's great. It's, you know, it's new material, Maiden new material," but there is just as many people that are going, "You know what? I don't like this direction that they're going in." Yeah.
I personally like the new Maiden single better than the single they put out for Book of Souls.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I belong to either or, because like
No,
I
no.
like I I like a lot of stuff that Maiden did, even in their lower parts,
Yeah.
you know. And I think as a writing team, the single Bruce and Adrian have always wrote great stuff together. And if you understand Adrian's style, you'll
Yeah.
understand why him and Bruce writing that. It sounds more, it definitely has a bluesier kind of feel, but there's also
Yeah.
a very rock and roll feel, which takes me back to like 2 minutes to midnight, you know.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
I can see where people have the problem, but at the same time, it's not a problem.
Oh, it probably
You know what I
sell.
mean?
Yeah, it might be a problem to them, but probably sell millions as it
Oh
always
yeah,
has.
you know it will, no matter what,
Yeah.
you know. But I mean, you know, the thing with Maiden is bands change. They've been around for so
Yeah.
long, they can't do the same thing.
No.
I
No.
think Sabbath made the mistake of doing 13 and trying to recapture what they did with the first two records. When you go into a studio, you just do what you do. You don't have any preconceived, oh, we got to write like we did when we were 20.
Yeah.
That's always gonna give you trouble.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Totally.
You know, so Samson ended what, 81, 82, 83?
80. No, no, no. For me, it was. I think it was 81. Yeah.
Okay.
Um, there was a split. What was happening was that it's. You think of the amount of. There weren't egos, but you think of the amount of power struggles that went on
Yeah.
within Samson, because first of all, you got Paul saying, "Well, hang on a minute, it's called Samson. My name is Paul Samson, so it must be my band."
Yeah.
Bruce Dickens at the front, who's now found his voice and says, "Well, hang on a minute, I'm the front man. I should be the focal point. It's all
Oh
about me."
God.
And then you got the image, Thunderstick image, where a large amount of the not sales, I'm not talking about record sales, I'm
Yeah.
talking about the exposure.
The papers.
Was a Thunderstick. And so what was happening was this really strange concoction of
Yeah.
stuff going on behind the scenes. And I started getting alienated from the band. They wanted to go back to scruffy jeans and a t-shirt on stage, whereas I wanted to go even more theatrical. But they hadn't got time for that. No, we don't want to be more theatrical. And what really happened was there was an interview that Bruce and Paul did with Kerrang, and they said, "Look, you know, could you please ask us questions about the music and how things come about? What, you know, please
Yeah.
don't ask us about what fucking Thunderstick is doing." So when the interview came out, the guy that had written up the interview had put tiny little Thunderstick masks by the side of every single paragraph, and there was a huge, great section about me and the whole bit at the end of it. and that was it. That's kind of what blew it all. And I just
Somehow that's your fault, right?
yeah, it was. Yeah, I just wanted to be more theatrical, and they didn't want that at all. I find it somewhat amusing that Iron Maiden are now one of the biggest, most theatrical bands that you can go and see.
Oh yeah, and they have been since the '80s too.
Yeah.
You know,
but Bruce didn't want it at the time. Oh no, I want T-shirts, and there's pictures of us when we were at the Marquee Club, and Bruce is wearing a hooped rugby shirt and just an old pair of jeans and stuff.
Well, it's funny because when he got hired by Maiden, the manager looked at him and said, "You look like a roadie. Here's 50 quid. Go buy a fucking leather jacket, you bum." Like, so that whole thing doesn't make sense to me either.
We used to call that I don't know whether I can say it, but we used to call that a sea kit, as it were. Go and put your sea kit on. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah. So the first thing he went out and did was go and buy a sea kit. You look at early pictures of Maiden, it's funny, isn't it? Because they all look exactly the same. They're all like kind of robots. Leather jacket, faded denim
jeans.
Yeah, faded denim jeans, white boots.
The big sneakers back in the day that were cool.
Anyway, so that was it for me. The bell tolled my demise, and I was no longer with Samson for that time. And of course, we got back together again much later.
Yeah. So. And you got Thunderstick started, or at least started laying the groundwork, right? Around this time?
Yeah. First thing I did was went and played with Bernie Tormey.
Oh, wow.
In Electric
great, or was.
Yeah. I mean,
a lot of people don't realize he was actually the first replacement for Randy Rhoads.
He learned the set on the plane going
Jesus
out.
Christ.
Yeah.
If people would, seriously, I'm glad that I have you on this show, because there's so many people who don't know any of this stuff. So, like,
Ozzy was in a very dark place.
Yeah.
Darker than usual. And
yeah.
Had to find a guitarist. And because Bernie had been playing with Gillan, I'm not sure how it came about. It was either agents or publishing companies or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
But he got the call, and he literally had to learn the set on the way out. And I think, I'm not sure, you probably know more than me. I think the first gig that he did was Madison Square Gardens with him. I think
possibly, something like that. Yeah. Some big place like that for sure.
Yeah. And to do that, it's just you've got to be a phenomenal musician, and Bernie was.
Yeah, especially stepping into Randy's shoes for the first time.
And
holy shit.
What a guitarist. He was a great guitarist. A good mate as well. And
yeah, there's a lot. Al Atkins, when he passed away, he had a lot of good things to say about him as well and stuff. It was making the rounds. I'm just like, man, this guy should be more well known.
Yeah. Well, look at the stuff he did with Dee Snider.
Yeah.
I mean, that and Clive Burr, Desperado.
Another great. And you play a lot like Clive too. Your styles seem very similar.
Yeah, that's strange that you should say that, because I thought that when I first heard the material, that when I was first given the Samson material with Clive playing on it, I thought, oh wow, I can manage to do that, because he's a lot like the way I play. Yeah.
So wait, I didn't know that Clive was in Samson before you?
Yeah.
Jesus Christ, your links to Maiden, like, you can't get away from it.
Yeah. Didn't you know that? Wow.
I didn't know that Clive was in Samson before you, though. That part I didn't know.
The weirdest thing about it was that I was playing gigs with Samson with Iron Maiden stenciled on my drum cases. And you know what I'm going to say? And Clive, when he first joined Maiden, had Samson written on it.
That's great. Oh my God.
Yeah. I mean, because when he joined, I was asked to join again.
Really?
Yes. Seriously, what happened was, because they'd been out on tour with us, they saw how I played every single night. And when we finished that tour, it was just coming up to Christmas holidays, and the phone. We just finished the tour. I went home for the Christmas break, and the phone rang, and it was Steve Harris, and he said, "We're going to part company with our then drummer Doug Samson."
Mm-hmm.
He was having some problems with his arms or something. Something was happening that he would start the set and the faders would be down here, and by the end of the set, the sound engineer for the drums was pushing the faders up. Got no more headroom, couldn't do anymore, and it was because he was getting weak in his arms or something.
Yeah.
So
well, he said the touring lifestyle wasn't really doing good for his body or anything, so he couldn't handle the touring after a while in the documentary. So that sounds about right.
Okay. So they phoned me and they said, "Are you interested?" And by this time, obviously, Thunderstick was well established as an image.
Yeah.
They didn't want any of that. They just wanted me, the Barry Graham Perkins that used to play with Maiden back in '77.
Yeah.
So I went and played with them, had a jam over Christmas, and we went through the material, some of the material, and because I felt as though I was being put into that box again, there it was.
You're like, nope.
It's sitting in the corner, and I just knew. And I can remember Rod Smallwood standing there and saying, "This band, I'm going to make this band bigger than Led Zeppelin." And I thought, okay, well, it's very nice to believe in your band, but they're of a different time, so you can't draw that comparison. No. You can't say, "Oh, they're bigger than Led Zeppelin," because Led Zeppelin were completely different time period.
Yeah.
But anyway, by the time that I was playing the third number, and a lot of it was the material that I played with them back in the day.
Yeah,
I knew that it wasn't going to be for me, and so Steve and I kind of parted company, best of mates, and said, best of luck. And we were in Kingsway studio doing some stuff. I can't remember what we were doing. We were recording some stuff. It might have been a single or B-side or something like that. And John McCoy was down there with us, and he came into the control room and he said, "I'll just take the phone call. Guess who's got the gig with Iron Maiden?" And we went, "Oh," and he went, "Clive Burr." It was like, "You're kidding me, really?" Yeah.
Wow.
So that's it. We kind of went, both he and I went like that.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
I mean, Clive seemed like a nice guy. I wish I could have been able to meet him.
Clive was a really nice guy. Yeah. Had his problems, just as we all do.
Yeah, which I don't know why there's so much secrecy with stuff in the Maiden camp. I only know rumors that he liked to dabble in certain mind-altering things. That's about it. I don't know anything else.
Yeah, likewise, I don't know because I was never there, but I know that, he was. So
yeah, but
and I was told that he used to have a little mini bar behind his drum riser.
Oh, really? Yeah. I never heard that.
So that he would come back for a quick one, and then but, I don't know. That's what I was told. So
yeah.
No, I really used to rate his playing. He's playing on stuff like "Run to the Hills."
Oh yeah, The Prisoner, man.
Yeah.
That
it's
for
so
me.
Good. It really is. Nico's
and as good as Nico is, when they do like The Prisoner or something with him on drums, it's not as powerful as when Clive did it. No disrespect. Nico is a fucking octopus, and we know that.
Yeah.
But it doesn't, The Prisoner from the Beast on the Road footage compared to Made in England with Nico, it's not anywhere near as powerful.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That can only come from the player itself.
Yeah.
So with Thunderstick and Samson, how did Thunderstick start forming from the ashes of Samson, so to speak, real?
As I say, I went and played with Bernie for a little while, and I had the marriage that I was in at the time. My brother-in-law was a bass player, and we had played in a few little bands together when I'd come back from Sicily. So I asked him if he could start, looking around. I put an advert in Melody Maker, start looking around, and right then and there, I determined that it was going to be a female vocalist. And the main reason for that at the time was mainly because there were not that many female vocalists that were singing in male bands.
That is true.
There were female bands like Vixen and Girls' School.
Runaways.
Yeah. Those sort of bands, but there was not a female out the front of a male rock band or metal band. So
yeah, because you had things like Blondie and you had punks like the X-Ray Specs, but you didn't have metal bands like that.
No. So I thought, okay. And then the other thing that came to mind was all the stuff that I had to suffer with the women's activist groups.
Yeah.
And all. It would have been a lot easier for me to turn around if I had any criticism in the stage persona that was Thunderstick. I could then point them in direction of the singer and go, look, go and talk to her. If you think that I'm this kind of person and, you know, I'm glorifying all kinds of weird and wonderful shit, go and talk to her.
Absolutely.
So that's the way it came in. And then I softened the image by creating the new Thunderstick mask rather than the old one, because as we spoke about earlier, it was the old one was very stark and very menacing, whereas I made the character a little bit more user friendly, as it were.
Yeah, you put the studs on it and had that kind of vibe, which looks cool as shit. It kind of looks cooler than the old mask in a way, you know. So what was the lineup? What were the songs that were being written?
The lineup was a 5-piece, female vocals, as I just said, bass drums and 2 guitars. Material, it was just stuff that I have a very eclectic taste when it comes to listening to music, very diverse. You know, there are weird, wonderful bands that I listen to that used to drive Paul Samson totally mad. You know,
I drove my parents nuts. I learned how to play bass, which helped me become a better guitar player, ironically.
Yeah.
To the first Pink Floyd album, the first Sex Pistols album, and AC/DC.
Oh, yeah.
That's my bass playing or my musical core. So just those 3 alone don't fit in the same category.
So your parents were subjected to that all the time then, coming from your bedroom, yeah?
Yes, especially Interstellar Overdrive. I used to watch videos of how did that beep boop. I watched Roger do it on his Rickenbacker, so there I am doing all those weird bleep bloop jet, you know, experimenting.
Okay, well, around that time then, when I was living at home, my parents were subjected to Hawkwind,
nice.
Frank Zappa.
Ha!
I mean, early Zappa stuff, you know, Lovely Gravy, absolutely, you know.
My guitar's gonna kill your mama.
Yeah, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And the Residents. Do you ever remember the Residents?
Yes.
They're coming over to this country soon. I went and saw them last time that they played here. You know,
awesome.
Because they're totally out there. They're really bizarre. Devo, you know, all those kind of bands. I love diversity.
So do I.
So I was even listening to bands, as you say, like Blondie, and there were a lot of kind of pop rock bands around the time that had that kind of really. I loved the Cars when they first came out. The first Cars album. So I started writing. All those kind of influences just started bubbling away, and I was just coming out with the material, and it would be
like rock and roll pretty much sums that up pretty well. Yeah.
So Ben and I, the bass player, we got together quite regularly, and we just started putting material together. And I've always been lucky in as much as that I can be quite prolific when I start writing. The problem is trying to get me to start writing. Once I start, then that's it. I really hit it.
But I'm the same way. I can't make myself write something. It has to be, you know, but when I do, it's done rather quickly. It's all there.
But do you write under pressure as well? If you know that something that you've got to have either a master or you've got to have a mix done by this time or whatever.
I've done that before. I've been in bands where, you know, me and the bass player wrote everything, and we were like literally writing songs and showing them the next day for the gig next week, or yeah, I've had that, but like,
and the same with my production. I love people that such as Brian Eno, those kind of producers really that push the boundaries.
Yeah.
So, as I said earlier, I used to love being in the studio, and I enjoyed it so much. So all the material started coming together quite quickly, and finding the band we went through some lineup changes and it wasn't right, but we got there in the end. First gig that I did was at the Marquee, and it was the Marquee is for people that listen and watch you that don't really know much about it. Go and have a look at the history of the Marquee, because it is a real kind of rock and roll holy grail.
Oh yeah, it's England's like whiskey a go-go in a way.
That's it.
That's a good way to describe it. I mean, Guns N' Roses, before they were even known over here, they were big over there and played the Marquee before Appetite came out.
Yeah.
And so people forget that.
That's it. So I was lucky in as much as that my first gig was at the Marquee, and we sold out. We sold the place, and we went down really, really well, which was great. But I wasn't happy, and I needed a reshuffle, and it's always been like that. I've worked with a lot of musicians. There has never been a staple, one lineup that I stuck to. I've often changed musicians.
Yeah.
Because I like working with different musicians. That's all it is, really.
Absolutely. I understand that. Sammy Hagar's another one like that. He doesn't understand how you can stay in the same group for 50 years.
Yeah.
I mean, I can see both sides, but I can see where, if you're a musician's musician, you want excitement. You want something different.
That's it.
You don't like complacency.
I mean, I've been criticized by some of the ex-Thundersticks musicians at times have criticized me for that and saying that they never actually felt part of the band. And that for me is upsetting. It's not very nice to hear that, and I'm unhappy about that, because at the time they were just as important as everybody that was in the band.
Yeah, and I've been around for a couple lineup switches, and I'm still friends with all of them, and they don't say anything bad, at least the recent ones that I know of.
So with the new album that I'm doing at the moment, I've got a few guitarists on it. There's about 5 different guitarists on it, which I'm really pleased about, because it has that diversity. It has, what I wanted it to be. So
absolutely. And if you ever need any help, once I get recording equipment, I won't bitch. Like, I was never part of the band. I submitted a track. I'm on a record with Thunderstick. I'm okay with that, because I am a musician and I do think outside of the box. When you were talking about that 5-minute Spacey solo, I'm like, man, love to do something like that, because I love that ambience. I play slow, really moody stuff that's repetitive and almost drony sometimes, just because I love the feeling it gives you. It's pure feeling,
Yeah.
So your first gig at the Marquee went great.
It did.
And I'm glad to hear that. Was there an EP with Feel Like Rock and Roll before the album?
Yes. Okay. That was a self-financed, self-financed 4-track EP that we put out. And they were the first songs that I started writing. In actual fact, the very first song that I wrote was a track called Fly Mighty.
Okay.
The reason for that was because the Kerrang feature that led to my departing in Samson was actually entitled Fly Mighty. So
that's awesome.
Yeah. So that's what I called it.
So nice little dig there.
Yeah. We started, we did, I got some financial investment into the band. Unfortunately, again, I'm always that kind of underground type following. I've never had that huge exposure that a lot of bands have managed to get. I mean, bands that came out at the same time as us. But it's just one of those things. I guess my writing style is eclectic, and I kind of guess that I kind of somewhat resilient, and I'm fully aware of the fact that I'm never going to be, the biggest thing since whatever.
But I think in a way that gives you even more credibility than some of the divas that become of these people.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you. That's really cool.
I think your missus is trying to give you a drink.
Oh yeah. Hang on a sec, 2 seconds. Oh, thank you very much.
What's the dog doing?
Oh, not that much Jack Daniel, did it?
Hello.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
I'm in the middle of clearing out the lofts at the moment, or attics.
Oh, you're fine. It's rock and roll.
See you again.
So yeah, it changed. I changed a lot of lineups, and
Yeah.
but we're still here. We're still doing it. I mean, the reason I got back to playing live was I gave up Thunderstick in the 80s, and because I obviously you probably know the story about how we went on to do some stuff with Samson.
Yeah.
We got back together again, and that was cool. That was good. We did some shows in the States. We did some shows in Japan, and that was really good. And then
How long did that last, roughly?
Well, it was more intended to be writing material than doing live stuff.
Okay.
At the time, Bruce was going to come and do a tour with us.
Really?
Yeah, seriously.
What year was this?
This was, oh Christ, when did we do? I think it must have been 99. This was
Okay, so before he joined Maiden again.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay,
and
gotcha.
Said, oh,
when he's kicked like a dog, then he'll come back and do something with you, right? Is it that kind of thing?
That's it. He was doing his solo stuff, which I really like. I like his solo stuff. And we had been writing some new material, and Paul got hold of Bruce and said, would you be interested? And he said, yeah, send me the stuff. I'll have a listen and we'll see where it goes from there. So we went up and saw him. He got the material and said he really liked it. And we went up and saw him play with his solo band. And afterwards we were talking to him, and, we said, is there a likelihood that you'll go back to Maiden? And I can't really, for legal reasons, give you the full answer that he said.
Okay.
But it was kind of, no, I won't go back to Maiden again. And then 2 weeks after having that conversation backstage in the bar, all the press came out that he had just rejoined Iron Maiden. So we never got to actually record with him again. But yeah, it would have been
That's
good.
unfortunate, because that would have been cool to have one more classic sounding Samson record with a modern production like that.
Yeah, I would have loved it, but
I mean,
but instead I got to work with Nicky Moore, who replaced Bruce, and a lot of people that believe in Samson say that was probably the best lineup, and that Nicky's voice was more suited to Samson than Bruce's was.
Yeah. Well, Bruce's definitely seemed like an odd pairing, but it worked at least for a couple records. But I could see where it wouldn't, be a permanent fit, especially on Shock Tactics, like you said, where he found his voice. Yeah. When he found his voice, the band changed. You know what I mean? Yeah. It didn't seem like that would be able to stick forever, unfortunately.
And so we did Wacken, which is huge.
And I've seen footage of you guys playing from that on YouTube and shit like that. So I kind of agree that for Samson, that probably was the best lineup for you guys.
And we did a London show, and we recorded that and we put it out as a live album, that was really good. It was nice. So yeah. But Thunderstick was back in the 80s. I had there was a young lady that came from the States who loved The Who. She loved English rock, and so she was at the time she had just finished college, and she'd been singing, she'd been doing summer stock, and all that kind of stuff, touring with that. She jumped on a plane and came to this country, and her name was Jodie Valentine. And we got together, and I used to say to the band, because we got a female vocalist, I said, no fraternization within the band.
Yes.
Doesn't work. It doesn't
Don't
happen.
dip your pen in company ink.
And what did I do? Yeah, committed to that same thing.
Oh, no.
That heinous crime. Yeah. So I was married at the time, and I got together with Jodie, and we then eventually got married. We brought Thunderstick to the States to see if we could get any work there. We were very nearly signed to Pat Benatar's management at the time, but it didn't happen, and it all fell apart.
Man.
And we came back to the UK. We broke up because it's that volatile environment, the music industry, to work together and have a relationship together. It just doesn't.
Yeah, it does,
I
unfortunately.
should have listened to my own voice, but I didn't. Anyway, she went back to the States, and that was the end of that. And I wasn't going to put together a touring band ever again.
Yeah.
And then, out of the blue, I got contacted by a school friend, and he said, I've got a studio. Why don't you come up to the studio? And we just have a fool around, have a play and what have you. So
Yeah.
I went over there, and because we were in a little bedroom band when we were youngsters. I was about I don't know, 10, something like that.
Yeah, I had a few of those buddies.
Yeah, bedroom band.
Yeah.
Called Chinese Moon.
Yeah.
Cosmic. So anyway, it was really weird to hear from him. And long story short is that I went up there, we did some playing. He said, what are you doing in Thunderstick? And I said, I'm not doing anything. And he said, well, have you got material? I said, yeah, there's a lot of material that we used to play in the 80s that have never seen the light of day. It's never been recorded. So he said, look, can't we work out some sort of studio deal that you come up and you do the album up here? And we did. And I got a young lady in to do this. This was the album called Something Wicked This Way Comes.
Which is a great record, by the way.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
I love it.
Do you?
And I gotta say, probably The Shining or Encumbrance. It's between those two that I just fucking love.
Thank you. So unfortunately with Lucy, I didn't get on with her. So she became a session singer rather than a member of the band. And then out of the blue, somebody contacted me and said, I'll tell you what it was. It was the record label that wanted to put out a retrospective of all the Thunderstick material, all the early stuff.
Oh, wow.
Heartbeat, the Beauty and the Beast, Feel Like Rock and Roll, and some other oddities that had never got released. Heaven and Hell Records, it was called. And this guy contacted me and said, have you ever thought about doing this retrospective? And I said, no, not really. He said, well, how much material have you got? And I said, I've got loads of material. So we did it, and we put it together. He then contacted me and said, I want to get to talk to Jodie Valentine because she's on most of the tracks that are on that album.
Yeah.
And well put together. It was a good album. It looks good, and it sounds good. I mastered it over a period of a year, all the early stuff from way back, early 80s. So I was kicking it into the digital age because that's why I called it Echoes from the Analog Asylum, because
and I have that signed copy from you, which I love.
Okay, cool. So anyway, we did this, and he said, I want to speak to Jodie. And I said, okay, I actually have a phone number, although we'd never had contact after we got divorced. I've got a phone number for her. So he spoke to her, and he came back to me and he said, she's really out in left field. She's really out there. And I said, how do you mean? He said, she just, doesn't seem to be getting it. She just doesn't understand what's going on. That I'm putting an album out and that I want an interview with her and what have you. And I thought, that's really odd. So anyway, we did the album, we put it out. And then out of the blue, somebody who had bought that album contacted me, who was a musician himself, He said, did you know that Jodie has got had early Alzheimer's disease and has recently died? And I was like, you're kidding me, man. And so what had happened was that she had been in a care-assisted home for 5 years.
Oh, wow.
With early onset Alzheimer's disease. He was a musician and he used to go and visit people as a volunteer. And he would go to these homes and, go and sit with these people. And he took the album in and she didn't even recognize her own voice. She just sat and stared out the window. And that really, really upset me a lot.
Yeah, that's never fun. That's got to break your heart into pieces, man.
It was. So the material that we had done had never seen the light of day. And I said, that's it, I'm going to record it. And that's what led to Something This Way Comes. That's why you probably read the sleeve notes. If you've seen the sleeve, it's all about her dying.
Yeah.
And then I got pushed into, well, why don't you, we got some really good reviews on the album. And people would say, well, why don't you go put a band together to go and play live again? And so that's exactly what's happened. I put a band, and the singer that I've got now, oh my God, she's just fantastic.
You still have Raven on board?
Yep. Yeah. And oh man, I can't wait for people to hear what, this is not sales talk. This is genuinely from my heart. I can't wait for people to hear what she's done on this album because,
I can't wait to hear it. Just from seeing the pictures of her and the way her stage presence is completely fits with what you do perfectly.
Yeah, she's great. She really is so special. She's never done it before. She's never done theatre rock or she sings to a covers band, and she does stuff like Guns N' Roses and anything, even ZZ Top, stuff like that. Just stuff people want to hear. But she had never been in an originals band doing their own material, and she blows me away. She really does. Some of the vocal performances that she does. Oh, I'll send you some.
Absolutely, I'd love to hear it. I can't wait.
Okay.
If you can get me an EPK or something, electronic press kit for it, I would love to give you some good hype.
Well, because of COVID and everything else, we've had to put everything back. The album was supposed to be released by now.
Yeah.
But because of this pandemic and everything's shutting down, it won't be released until early next year now.
Okay.
But I'm taking a couple of singles from it to release.
All right, cool.
So
let me know when something physical is available. I definitely want it. I'll have you sign it for me too.
That's cool.
I'm just
good. It's I'm still sitting here and working on some of the mixes at the moment, and but it keeps me busy. The good thing about it is that during this pandemic, I'm lucky enough that I do stuff from home here, and I'm able.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Do you record at home as well?
I do have to say, for all its, problems, there's been a lot of good creativity from a lot of good musicians like yourself with the same setup, like all over the world, and that's the one hope I have, is that the one good thing that could come out of this is people actually appreciate art again.
Yeah.
Because
can't wait to get out again live. Really can't. So we're gonna, when the album does come out, I'm gonna tour it next year.
Any plans to come to the States or any thoughts?
I just would love to, but it's all about money, isn't it?
It is.
It's about money. It's.
I've actually heard it's more expensive for you lot to come over here than it is for a gang to play over there.
Yeah, probably.
Which is insane to me.
Yeah, it is. But that's the way it is,
That's unfortunate.
Unless you've got a good tour, back-to-back dates, and you don't have to, take backline or anything like that. That would be impossible to take backline out,
Yeah. But
I can't imagine what Iron Maiden's budget must be like for doing tours.
From my experience, I seen them in 2003 with Dio and Motorhead, which I never knew at the time in 7th grade what a momentous concert that would be.
Yeah.
It was amazing, but they that was their last decade alive, pretty much. You know,
Yeah.
my first and only time seeing either one. But when I saw Maiden in 2009, I saw Richie Faulkner for the first time, who joined Judas Priest recently,
Right,
and
yeah.
Steve Harris's daughter's band. And then I think for the last US tour they did, they had Bruce Dickinson's son's band. So it seems the only way to open up for Maiden.
Yeah, they're relative. Yeah. Oh well, there you go.
It's a shame though, because it would be really cool, you know, because Kiss has talked about their last show having former members up there. It'd be really cool to see Maiden or like, you know, do a package tour of the new wave of British heavy metal like they do the Big Four for Thrash.
Well, that would be good. Yeah, that would be really good. I mean,
I think you put like, you know, you guys on a bill with 3 other bands and tour, I'm sure that would come over here no problem.
But it's funny because the last gig that we did before the lockdown, we had a band that opened called Gypsy's Kiss.
Iron Maiden, yeah.
And Buffalo Fish, which is Terry Watbrum's band, you know. So there were 3.
Are there any discs left of that Coventry tribute thing, the Roots of Iron Maiden thing you were a part of recently? Because I think that happened right before the pandemic, and I was looking at it, and I've lost touch with that link since.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah, the Cart and Horses compilation. Do you know if that's still in print, or is that sold out?
Yeah, no. That's still, you could still get that. That's only been kind of comparatively recently, isn't it? Really? Yeah.
Well, I thought it was. I saw it come out recently.
Yeah.
Around the.
No, it's still, it's still there. Yeah. I mean, he sent me a load the other week that I had to sign. Send back. So.
I'll have to get a copy from you in a couple weeks then, because you know you mentioned the Iron Maiden Cart and Horses thing, made me think of the compilation that you were on recently.
Yeah. But it'd be cool to do a tour like that, wouldn't it? You know,
it would.
Have a few bands that you know have that Iron Maiden affiliation. But
I mean, I'm not trying to diss anybody, but if they can send a hologram of Dio on tour,
yeah,
I that's all I'm gonna say. That's all I'm gonna say on that.
Weird, isn't it? It's just weird.
Fucking strange.
It is. There'll be a day when you know everything will be a hologram, and you just go and play and sit and watch a band as a hologram. That would be it.
Yeah, makes me think of something out of the Jetsons tune.
Yeah, it's a lot cheaper. Yeah, there you go.
So obviously you've got an album coming out next year and a tour. Any other big plans? Any other news?
Just want to play. I just want to play live, and I'm kind of nailing everything on this album, you know, because it's I think it's the material is really strong, and I've got some great performances on it, and we just see what happens from there on in. Really, who knows? I mean, you can't plan anything at the moment because of all the stuff that's going on all the time. You just
and if you guys are on a second lockdown, who knows? We could end up locked down again too. You know, it's scary times, but you know.
Oh, I've been double jabbed, so I've
me too.
Have you?
You know, I wanted to go to shows, and that's pretty much the only way you can do anything.
Really?
You know?
Yeah.
So
what, you have to show something that you've been.
Well, no, because that violates the law, but pretty much not far from now in the US, if you're not vaccinated, you're going to have a bad time. That's the way it's getting.
Wow.
I mean, a lot of stores, like, they can't ask you because it violates privacy laws, but there's signs in stores that says, if you are unvaccinated, you don't have to wear a mask in here, but if you aren't, then it's highly recommended you do. They can't legally ask you to show a paper. But you know, it's getting to that point. Unfortunately, you got, you know, everything going on, and everything else is a dumpster fire.
Yeah, that's right. It is. Oh, well.
I've always said the majority of people suck, and you can't look any further than right now for evidence of that.
Yeah, totally agree.
Is there anything you want to tell your fans before we close up here?
Just anybody that is a fan of the band, I really appreciate it. You mean a lot to us, and I really do mean that. You're special to have people that like what I do, and you know that's all I can say is just thanks for being there. And I hope that I can, you know, that your belief in me, I can justify your belief by getting some good product out there again and, you know, letting you hear some more music.
You haven't disappointed me, and I'm a proud stormtrooper. Probably one of the only one stateside with your patch on my jacket. So,
oh, that's amazing. Thank you, man.
You know, I've got the Wrathchild logo tattooed, probably one of the only Yanks with that. So, you know,
wow.
I'm the kind of person where when I like a band from a musical movement, I have to know everything.
Right.
And that goes for any band, whether it's Maiden or Nirvana.
Right.
You know, I take deep dives into it all so I can understand it, dissect it, figure out what's shit, what's not. You know, and you can really do that.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know why more people don't, because there's so much great music. I mean, you know, my radio show is chaos, absolute chaos, because you never know what era or what I'm going to play next. And neither do I.
How big's your listening audience?
As far as I know, pretty good. I've got, you know, friends listening. I don't know if the regular listeners. It's harder to track that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's online. I get good reviews. I've got almost 200 followers on my public figure page that I use just to promote everything, like the channel, the radio show.
Yeah.
You know, I'll play Thunderstick, followed by the Stooges, followed by Robert Johnson. And that's just one example. You know what I mean?
Right.
I go all out.
Can you send me a link?
I will. I will after we're done here. And I need your links so I can put underneath this too, so everyone can find your stuff.
Okay.
My one final question I have that I ask all of my guests: what do you, at the end of the day, love about music?
Freedom. And just, it's just accompanies life, doesn't it? It's, you can listen to something that is part of your history, and it will automatically take you straight back to that time.
Yep.
And it's just like a punctuation mark, isn't it, in you know, in the dictation of your life.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And it's nothing else for me. Nothing else does that. I mean, you know, it's all very well appreciating great art and stuff like that, and photographs, but nothing stirs the soul as much as music from.
Well, because music is kind of like living art. It's alive.
Yeah,
it's a living, breathing thing,
it is.
you know, as opposed to a painting on a wall.
Yeah, yeah.
You know? All right.
Having that eclectic choice of being able to, as you said, being able to dip into this and dip into that.
Yeah. Like, oh, Iron Maiden's part of the new wave of British heavy metal. What's that about? Oh, yeah. Tigers of Pantang, Praying Mantis. Ooh, Thunderstick, Samson, you know.
Well, you remember a band called More?
Yeah.
I've got Dave John Ross is on this album as well.
Awesome.
And he's a great guitarist as well.
Yeah, it's funny because Al Atkins, he's a friend of mine too, and he had, I think, Brian from Diamond Head on one of his records.
Untitled, yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's what's nice to see, is all of you guys are kind of somewhat connected and friends, and you help each other out. That's really cool to see too. That's very much the rock and roll heavy metal way.
Yeah, it is. Oh, God, yeah. Definitely is. Above any other music form.
Oh, yeah. All right.
It's been, what can I say? It's been great talking to you.
It's been an honor, man. I mean, I've been friends with you for how long, and I'm finally meeting you face to face, you know.
Thank you very much, man.
Thank you very much. And hey, guys, if you like what we're doing here, interviewing Thunderstick, hit the like button, hit the subscribe, leave some comments. You know, I'm sure Thunderstick will be around.
Yep, I will be.
You know, and I'll leave links down to get the merch. Make sure you grab something Wicked This Way Comes. Absolutely phenomenal record.
Thank you.
Once again, this has been Crashing Thunders, and I'm Thunders, here with the legendary Thunderstick.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care, man.
You too. Cheers.
Bye.